Well, hi everyone. I glad to be back talking to you again a little bit about my thoughts about what I'm studying right now. And I decided to go back to another woman that I haven't looked at yet. I've looked at quite a few women in the past couple of years that I've studied, and this time I decided to go back to the Old Testament and look at Rahab. I didn't know much about Rahab. I knew her story briefly, but I've never really spent a lot of time thinking about that, meditating on that, learning from that. So I thought, well, why not go back and do Rahab? So that's where I am. And Rahab's story is mostly told in the book of Joshua. And you think of the Old Testament now, we have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua. So that's the sixth book of the Old Testament. Not all of the Old Testament books are in like a chronological or historical order, okay? But these six are generally in the right order, okay? Because Genesis would tell the beginnings of the world and the beginnings of early man. Exodus, of course, talks about, think of the word exit, it talks about the Israelites, Moses leading the Israelites out of captivity in Egypt. So that's Exodus. Okay, Leviticus is a telling of all of the laws and regulations for living that God sets up for his nation so that his nation will be different from the other people. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Numbers is the numbers of people that are in the wilderness with Moses as they're preparing to get ready to go to the promised land. And there's a lot of things that happen in the book of Numbers. Deuteronomy. Okay, Deuteronomy, I always try to think of this like the word dual or duo, like the idea of two. Because if you remember in the book of Exodus, Moses got very angry at the Israelites for doing the golden calf, and he broke the Ten Commandments. He broke the chiseled stones of the Ten Commandments. In Deuteronomy, he has those rechiseled, and it's like a second telling of these commandments and a second telling of the laws, and really in a lot of ways it's Moses' way of getting the people ready for his death. He is not going to be the one to lead them into the promised land, and the reason for that is because at one point God wanted Moses to the people had been calling out for water, and he wanted to show how gracious and loving and holy he was by giving people this water from a rock. And he told him to touch it with his staff and water would come gushing out. But Moses really had lost patience by this time with all of this complaining. So he didn't just touch the rock, he smacked that rock with his stick. And he said, "What, do we got to get water out of a rock for you?" He was sarcastic to them. This wasn't what God wanted. It isn't what God instructed Moses to do. So he said to him, "Look, you're not going to be the one to bring my people into the promised land. That'll be somebody else's job. You forfeited that by your actions." And does that mean God didn't forgive him? Absolutely not. But it did mean there was a consequence to his actions. So it was then Joshua, really, that was given this task of bringing the Israelites into the promised land. And so the death of Moses is told right at the end of the book of Deuteronomy, before we get into Joshua. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and then Joshua. Okay, so Deuteronomy, the second telling, ends with the death of Moses. So, for example, Deuteronomy 34, right at the end of the chapter, verse 1. Moses went up to Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab and climbed Pisgah Peak, which is across from Jericho. So God is telling Moses, climb up to the top of this mountain. And when you look over across this mountain, you're going to see the promised land. You're going to see Jericho, which is on the other side of the Jordan River. Okay? So we think of our geography. I always have to go back and look at this. The Sea of Galilee is in the north. Then the Jordan River comes down like this. The Dead Sea is at the southern part of the Jordan River. And actually the Jordan River continues right down into the Red Sea. On one side of that Jordan River, we would have, I believe, modern-day Jordan, I think, and on the other side, Israel. So he's taking Moses up to Mount Nebo in the plains of Moab, which is in modern day Jordan, okay, right next to the Jordan River. And he says, here are these plains, but there's a mountain here. Go to the top of the mountain. And the Lord showed him the land from Gilead as far as Dan, all the land of Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah, extending to the Mediterranean Sea, right? The Mediterranean Sea is way to the east then, right? The Negev, the Jordan Valley with Jericho, the city of palms, as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to Moses, this is the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when I said, I will give it to your descendants. I have now allowed you to see it with your own eyes, but you will not enter the land. So what he showed him is everything from this mountain, everything over the other side of the Jordan River, all the way down to the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, all the way up to the Sea of Galilee and all the way down to the Dead Sea. And he showed them which tribes were going to have which parts of this land. And that was a gift to him. That was a grace that God didn't have to do, but he did it because he really loved Moses and he knew that Moses had made mistakes but was a good leader. So he showed him all of this. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, just as the Lord had said. And the Lord buried him in a valley near Beth Peor in Moab. But to this day, no one knows the exact place. I kind of like that. Nobody knows where Moses is buried. Moses was 120 years old when he died. Yet his eyesight was clear and he was strong as ever. And the people of Israel mourned for Moses on the plains of Moab for 30 days until the customary period of mourning was over. Now Joshua, son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid hands on him. So sometime before this happened, before Moses died, he had anointed or commissioned Joshua to be the next leader. Okay? And in doing so, the Spirit of the Lord was strong in Joshua. He was being led by the Spirit. So the people of Israel obeyed him, doing just as the Lord had commanded Moses. There has never been another prophet in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. The Lord sent him to perform all the miraculous signs and wonders in the land of Egypt against Pharaoh and all his servants and his entire land. With mighty power, Moses performed terrifying acts in the sight of all Israel. So they mourned him. That's kind of like a eulogy to him. It ends the book of Deuteronomy, a eulogy to Moses, because now the next book of the Bible is Joshua, and it starts right out with the death of Moses. So this is Joshua 1. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua of Nun, Moses' assistant, and he said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River into the land I am giving them. I promise you what I have promised Moses. Wherever you set foot, you will be on land I have given you. From the Negev wilderness in the south to the Lebanon mountains in the north, from the Euphrates River in the east to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. So he's promising to him that same promise that he made to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and eventually to Moses. And he's saying, Joshua, you're the one that's going to take them into the promised land. So still in Joshua chapter 1, but in verse 10, Joshua then commanded the officers of Israel, go through the camp and tell the people, get their provisions ready. In 3 days you will cross the Jordan River and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you. So I think, if I'm reading this right, they mourned Moses in the desert there for like 30 days. And then as soon as that time period was over, God said, come on, Joshua, you're the one. Let's get going here. And he said, in 3 days, we're going to cross that Jordan River and we're going to take this land. And what city was right across from this was Jericho. It was one of the cities you could see from this mountain where Moses was. Okay? So Joshua kind of called together everybody, told them what he was going to do, And in verse 16, they answered Joshua, "We will do whatever you command us, and we will go wherever you send us. We will obey you just as we obeyed Moses. And may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses." So here's Joshua ready to go out in 3 days, but he takes those 3 days to do something really cool. He's going to send in some spies. Okay, he wants the lay of the land before he gets there. Okay, so first, chapter 2 starts out with this plan that Joshua has. Then Joshua secretly sent out 2 spies from the Israelite camp in Acacia Grove. He instructed them, "Scout out the land on the other side of the Jordan River, especially around Jericho." So the men set out and came to the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there the night. So this is the first we hear of Rahab. These spies have gone out and they're trying to get the lay of the land in Jericho. And they come upon a house of ill repute, basically. And you think about this, I was thinking, and I was also reading a bunch of things about why that would have been the house what they went to. Like there probably was a ton of houses. Why pick that one? First of all, it probably was more like an inn, and other favors were given to these guests, whoever were there. And it was probably at that time, from what I've read in different accounts, that the city walls were built around a city, obviously for protection. Sometimes there would even be a city wall and they would build another wall inside it, or they would take over a city and they would build another wall to add to the wall that was already there, and there'd be like a little space in between. But when you think of the city center, the center of the city would be where all of the important things took place. Okay, and people that were probably ostracized from the city, or maybe weren't considered to be the cream of the crop, I would think would be more on the outskirts. This is kind of like the slums or something, maybe. You know what I mean? And just, first of all, they wouldn't have as much protection, because if she was on the outside wall, then she was, much more at risk than somebody that lived further into the city. Second of all, she was a prostitute, so I'm guessing she was not really a very prominent citizen, shall we say. I think she was probably considered to be untouchable, living on the edge of society in a way. And so therefore she also lived on the edge of the city. The other thing is, I think as foreigners, maybe they could sneak in a little bit easier if they went to a house of ill repute, and they didn't go to the big Radisson in the middle of the city. They went to the first place they found, and that was an inn, and they probably could be just mistaken as just regular customers that wanted to, check out Rahab's delights, as they were. So maybe that helped them kind of fit in as spies and maybe not be recognized as quickly. Okay. They were, however, recognized as Israelites and possible spies. Not by Rahab. Well, she knew who they were, but it wasn't Rahab who told on them. But in verse 2 of chapter 2, it says, "But someone told the king of Jericho." So somebody ratted, somebody ratted. Could have been another patron that was there. It could have been somebody who wanted to maybe gain favor with the powers that be. I don't know. But in any event, somebody told. Okay? So the king of Jericho sent orders to Rahab, "Bring out the men who have come into your house, for they have come here to spy out the whole land." Now, I'm thinking, as a woman, how would I feel if I've got these spies in my house and the king says to me, "Send them out"? I can't imagine that she wasn't scared out of her wits. I would be. My goodness, I'm scared if I'm driving along I'll tell you this story. This is a real big segue, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. When I was doing speech therapy with very little children, I used to carry toys in my car all the time. And one of the toys I had was this puzzle. And if you took a piece, each piece was a vehicle, like a fire engine and a Jeep and, a motorcycle. And they had little handles on them. When you picked it up, you heard the noise that particular thing made. So you heard a fire engine or a police car or, a motorcycle, boom, 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 and the little children just loved it. They thought it was great. But anyway, one time I'm traveling along in my car with that puzzle in my back seat, and all of a sudden I heard this siren, and my heart went a million miles, and I thought, oh my goodness, am I speeding? Yes, I probably am. And I pulled over to the side of the road, and there was no policeman. It was the puzzle. The puzzle sounded so real, and I thought the cops were after me. So we do have that initial fear, when an authority says, pull over, send out those spies. I can't imagine that her heart didn't go a million miles a minute, that she wasn't terrified. But she does something very unusual, very unusual. In verse 4, it says, Rahab had hidden the two men. And she replied, yes, the men were here earlier, but I didn't know where they were from. They left the town at dusk as the gates were about to close. And I don't know where they went. If you hurry, you can probably catch up with them. Okay, in reality, she's hidden them. So she did two very courageous things at this point. First of all, she hid them. Second of all, she covered up for them. She lied for them. And she told the king's messengers, no, I didn't. Geez, they were just, they were patrons. I didn't ask where they were from, That's not my job to find out where they were from, As a harlot, she could say, hey, men are men. I don't care where they were from. So she said she didn't even know they were Israelites. Obviously she did, as we'll find out later. But she said, I don't even know where they were from. But as soon as the gates were going to close, they hightailed it out of here. They're gone. But if you hurry, you might be able to catch up with them. That was a pretty smart maneuver on her part, wasn't it? I mean, pretty fast thinking on her part. So courageous, fast thinking. It's interesting, and to find out why she did this is going to be another part of this story. So that's just a little background on Rahab and a little beginning of her story. And I'm going to read the rest of the story the next time. But it took me a long time to get the geography and the history all set up in my mind so that I could remember where is Jericho and why do they want to go to Jericho. And then Joshua is pretty smart because he doesn't want to, he wants the Israelites to know that God is with them. But on the other hand, he's going to do some action here too. He's going to send those spies in, which I think is very important because we can depend on God. We can trust God, but that doesn't mean we just sit in a rocking chair and wait. It means sometimes there are smart actions that we need to do. And he was obviously being led by the Lord, and so he was going to participate in what the Lord is doing, bringing them into the land of the promised land. I don't think he was making a mistake here. I don't think he was doing anything evil by sending in these spies. Evil in God's sight, I mean. It didn't show a lack of trust. It showed a cooperation with God that he wanted to know as much as he could before he went in. Because later on, he does exactly what God tells him to do. So I don't think it's a lack of trust with God. I just think he's just a smart leader, and he wants to know what's what, before he sends everybody in there. And he does it in a secret way because he doesn't want all of Israel to know. He wants to just send these few little spies in. So the spies are there. They're in Rahab's house. She's hidden them and lied for them and sent the messengers the other direction. So we shall see what happens from here on out with Rahab. Until then, have a great day.